Welcome back to Bay Sunday. Our next guest is a Bay Area native who has done everything from radio DJing to stand-up comedy. He's been on Comedy Central, Showtime, Fox, and CBS, and now he's on Bay Sunday. And he's just completed a new documentary. It is called Looking for Lenny. We want to say hello to Patrick O'Sullivan. Welcome to our show.
Thank you.
Now, it's just starting off, we were just talking about it. You know, how do you get into stand-up comedy? How do you start that career?
Wow, it's hard to say. I mean, I was always a not very well-behaved child and voted class clown in school, and one of these things where I was doing theater at San Francisco State and kind of veered toward comedy, you know.
So it started early.
Yes.
Okay, let's talk a little more about your documentary. It's called Looking for Lenny, based on Lenny Bruce, someone that you consider one of your, maybe in your formative years, someone you really admired? Yeah,
absolutely. I mean, there's been works done on him before, but the reason we're doing this documentary, Looking for Lenny, is to kind of use his legacy as a mirror for what's happening now, because just as much as he was a comedian, he was a figure of freedom of speech. So he's kind of always relevant until that is a non-issue, which I don't ever see that being a non-issue.
How do you think he's relevant today? Because for people who may not be familiar with his work, because it was, you know, in the earlier 20th century, how do you think it's relevant now?
Well, like when we were doing the film, all these things started popping up, like Don Imus calling the Rutgers women's basketball team, you know.
Right.
Right. And,
the word we will not use here.
Yeah, and Michael Richards having his meltdown at the Laugh Factory when he was saying the N-word over and over. So all those things came up, which was kind of ironic because it granted it relevance to when we were doing it. So I think that'll always be there, you know. It's like an examination of speech, of freedom of speech. And that's what he was doing on stage, except he did it artfully, creatively, and in my opinion, was a genius at doing that.
Okay, I know you worked really hard on this. Let's just take a look at a clip from Looking for Lenny.
Ladies and gentlemen, here is a very shocking comedian, the most shocking comedian of our time, a young man who is skyrocketing to fame, Lenny Bruce. Here he is.
I promise continuity, I'll behave myself.
Lenny set the bar for comedy for everybody.
He opened the door for anybody who ever stands in public and speaks.
But you might be interested in how I became offensive.
It's all different than it was when we started.
When I first got into stand-up comedy, you couldn't have a cleavage or your knees showing.
He took on Catholics, Jews.
Now, they call Lenny Bruce shocking. Why was he so shocking?
Well, he was doing things at the time, you know, we were coming out of the era of comedians doing Take My Wife, Please. And he was that transition into what would become the careers of Richard Pryor and George Carlin, who they cite him as an inspiration. He was going up there and, you know, attacking the hypocrisy of religion, sex, race, and, you know, like what he says in that clip, he says, words that offend me, segregation. Whereas he was being attacked for four-letter words, yet what he was doing was trying to use the language to overexpose it so much that it lost its meaning.
So really making an impact in society in a lot of ways with his comedy.
Yes.
And did you learn anything about his personal life? Do you kind of focus on his...
I mean, so much has been done on his personal life, so we kind of give that as a basis so that if you haven't heard of him, you have that, you know, to go on. And unfortunately, like most people who are the first to take that risk, he did die of an overdose in 1966 and, you know, had his own demons and whatnot, which is sad, but the legacy he left is amazing.
You said you worked on this project for 3 years. You said it's a work of passion for you. And in doing that, you must have researched so much. What did you find that maybe you didn't know about someone that you had admired for so long?
Yeah, what was great is actually meeting people who knew him, you know, just these little personal stories. His roommate, a guy named Frankie Ray Pirelli, who's just a regular guy.
Frankie Ray.
Yeah, and he talks like that, you know, like Frankie, Lenny had the spaghetti sauce on his mouth. And, you know, those were great stories, and just me as a comic as well, going around. I remember we interviewed Rob Riggle, who was a pretty accomplished comedian himself, and he said, do you guys realize you're getting a PhD in comedy just by doing this? And it was kind of that reality check of, yeah, it was very worthwhile just doing it for that reason.
Okay, we're running out of time, but I wouldn't be amiss if I didn't mention that you're a stand-up comedian, you're here in the Bay Area to perform. What is your shtick about?
My shtick? Well, I have a one-man show this Sunday called Young Sully, Stories from an Irish-American Youth, about my experience growing up in the Irish immigrant culture of the Bay Area, which I do around St. Patrick's Day at the Exit Theater at 3 o'clock.
Okay, so just give me a little bit. Just give me a little preview into your...
I explained that my mother was a very fast talker, and the way she answered the phone was, ring, ring. Hello, Patrick. No, he came from school around 3:30, playing basketball in the driveway there with Adam Gostucci. Then he took off on his bicycle up to Taco Bell. He came racing back in the house around 5 o'clock. And in the front room, they were playing video games and wrestling around. I told him to knock it off before they break something. You think he listens to me? That guy, he doesn't listen to me.
And that's how it started.
Yes.
Class clown. All right. I want to say thank you to Patrick O'Sullivan. If you want to see him, 3 o'clock today, Sunday, at the Exit Theater. And if you want to check out Looking for Lenny, it will be available on March 9th on demand, DVD, iTunes, and Netflix. And if you like more information on Looking for Lenny, just go to their website, lookingforlenny.com. It's all one word. All right, stay tuned. We've got much more on Bay Sunday after this.